I stood in my parents' driveway, staring at the sold sign still planted in the front lawn. My brother Jake leaned against the doorframe, keys dangling from his finger like a trophy. Mom beamed beside him, her hand resting on his shoulder with the kind of pride I'd spent 32 years trying to earn. Dad cleared his throat and extended an envelope toward me. "We wanted to give you something too, sweetheart," he said, voice tight with what I assumed was guilt. I opened it slowly. Inside, a crisp $50 bill and a greeting card with a generic sunset on the front. The message inside read, "Every journey begins with a single step. Love, Mom and Dad." Jake got a 3-bedroom house in a neighborhood where starter homes were pushing $400,000. I got $50 and a Hallmark platitude, and the silence stretched between us like a canyon. Mom rushed to fill it, the way she always did when the favoritism became too obvious to ignore. "We know it's not the same," she said quickly, "but you're doing so well with your career. Jake and Melissa are starting a family. They need the stability." I folded the card closed, feeling the cheap cardstock bend under my thumb. "Right," I said softly. "Stability." Jake had been fired from 3 jobs in 5 years. His credit was so damaged he couldn't lease an apartment without a co-signer. Melissa worked part-time at a salon and spent weekends posting filtered photos on Instagram. Meanwhile, I'd spent the last decade building a career in commercial real estate financing. I closed deals, analyzed properties, structured loans for developers who built skylines. I bought my first condo at 26, paid it off early, and never asked my parents for a dime. But Jake needed stability. "Thanks," I said, sliding the envelope into my pocket. "This is really generous." Mom's relief was instant, her shoulders dropping as if I'd just absolved her. Dad nodded, already turning back toward the house like the conversation was over. Jake smirked. Not loudly, just enough for me to see it. I walked to my car, got in, and sat there for a long moment before starting the engine. The $50 bill felt like an insult folded in my pocket, but I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just drove home in silence, my hands steady on the wheel. When I got back to my apartment, I poured a glass of wine and opened my laptop. Then I did what I always did when emotions tried to cloud my judgment. I worked. I pulled up the county property records database and typed in my parents' address. The house they'd just given Jake had been in the family for 18 years, paid off, free, and clear. Or so I thought. But as I scrolled through the documents, something caught my eye. A lien filed 6 months ago. Not a small one. $240,000. I clicked deeper, pulling up the mortgage details. My parents had refinanced the house last year, taking out a massive loan against the equity. The payments were steep, over $1,800 a month. And according to the payment history, they'd already missed 2. I sat back, the glow of the screen reflecting in my wine glass. Jake didn't just get a house. He got a house with a mortgage my parents couldn't afford, a house they were about to lose. I took a slow sip, letting the information settle. Then I picked up my phone and called an old colleague from my days at the credit union. "Marcus," I said when he answered. "I need a favor." He laughed. "You only call when you need something." "What's up?" "I need information on a distressed mortgage," quietly. There was a pause. "How distressed?" "2 missed payments. Third one's coming up." "County?" I gave him the details. He whistled low. "That's a foreclosure waiting to happen. You looking to buy?" "Maybe," I said. "Depends on the terms." "Give me 2 days. I'll see what I can find." I thanked him and hung up, setting the phone down on the table. For the first time since standing in that driveway, I smiled. Not out of cruelty, out of clarity. If my parents wanted to play favorites, that was their choice. But they'd made a financial miscalculation. And that was something I knew how to fix. 2 days later, Marcus called back. "Your hunch was right," he said. "The lender's a small regional bank. They're already prepping foreclosure paperwork. Looks like your parents took out the loan for some investment that didn't pan out." "What kind of investment?" "Doesn't say, but the money moved fast. Withdrawn in 3 chunks over 6 months." I closed my eyes, piecing it together. Jake's wedding. The down payment for the business he and Melissa tried to start. The new truck he'd been driving around. My parents hadn't just given him the house. They'd bankrupted themselves trying to fund his life. "What's the bank's position?" I asked. "They want to move it. It's been sitting in their non-performing portfolio too long. If someone came in with a clean offer, they'd likely take it." "How clean?" "Below market. Maybe 220, 230. They just want it off the books." I did the math in my head. I had savings, good credit, relationships with lenders who owed me favors. "Can you connect me with their asset manager?" "You serious about this?" "Very." He exhaled slowly. "I'll make the intro. But Nina, if this is family..." "It's business," I said. "That's all it's ever been." 3 weeks later, I sat across from a man named Leonard Pritchard in a conference room that smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet. He slid the file across the table. "Property's clean. No secondary liens, no disputes. Just a couple who overextended and couldn't keep up." "Any contact with the borrowers?" I asked. "Minimal. They're trying to negotiate a modification, but their income doesn't support it. Honestly, we're just waiting for the clock to run out." I reviewed the terms, my pen tapping lightly against the folder. "I'll offer $225,000. All cash. Close in 30 days. Leonard's eyebrows lifted. "You're not financing?" "No need." He leaned back, studying me. "You know these people?" "Does it matter?" "Not to the bank." "Then we have a deal." He extended his hand and I shook it. Firm. Professional. Final. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell Jake. I just waited. The closing happened on a Thursday morning in a title company office downtown. I signed the papers, transferred the funds, and walked out with a deed in my hand. The house my parents gave to Jake now belonged to me. Not out of spite. Out of strategy. I drove to a cafe near my office and sat by the window, watching the city move around me. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Haven't heard from you in a while. Everything okay?" I stared at the message for a long moment, then set the phone face down on the table. I wasn't ready to answer yet. Not until I decided exactly how this would play out. That night, I reviewed the mortgage documents one more time, cross-referencing every clause. The bank had sold the note to me at a discount, which meant I now held the full debt. Jake and my parents had no idea the lender had changed. As far as they knew, they were still dealing with the same regional bank. But in 30 days, when the next payment came due, they'd receive a letter. A letter explaining that the mortgage had been purchased by a private investor. A letter with my name on it. I poured another glass of wine and opened my calendar, marking the date. Then I closed the laptop and sat in the quiet of my apartment. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to peace. Not the kind that comes from revenge, the kind that comes from control. And control, I'd learned long ago, was the only currency that mattered in my family. I gave it 2 weeks before I made contact, not because I was avoiding them, because I wanted the letter to arrive first. I wanted them to open it, read the new loan servicer information, and see my name listed as the mortgage holder. I wanted that moment of confusion to settle in before I explained what it meant. On a Saturday afternoon, my phone rang. "Dad." I let it go to voicemail. He called again. Then Mom. Then Jake. I answered on the 4th call, my voice calm and measured. "Hi, Dad." "Nina." His voice was tight, barely controlled. We need to talk. About? You know damn well about what? I took a sip of water, letting the silence stretch. The house, he finally said. You bought the mortgage? I bought the note from the bank, yes. It was a business transaction. Business? His voice cracked. That's your brother's house. Actually, it's my house. Jake's living in it under the terms of a mortgage that's 3 months past due. We were working with the bank. You weren't working with anyone, Dad. You were defaulting. The bank was preparing to foreclose. He went quiet. I could hear Mom in the background, her voice high and frantic. Why would you do this? He asked, quieter now. Because I could. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting right now. I heard him cover the phone, muffled voices arguing in the background. When he came back, his tone had shifted, pleading now instead of angry. Nina, please. We're family. You can't just... I can, I said softly. And I did. The same way you and Mom decided Jake needed the house more than I needed to be treated with basic respect. We gave you money. You gave me $50 and a card. The silence on the other end was thick and suffocating. Jake needed help, he said finally. You've always been fine on your own. Because I had to be. His breath shuddered through the line. What do you want? He asked. Money? We'll figure out the payments, just don't. I don't want money, I said. I want you to sit with what you've done, with the choices you made, and then we'll talk. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were steady. My heartbeat was calm. I wasn't angry. I was done. For years. And I'd watched my parents pour resources into Jake while I worked for every scrap of acknowledgement. I'd watched them excuse his failures as bad luck, while my successes were dismissed as expected. I'd watched them hand him everything while teaching me that love had to be earned. And I'd stayed quiet. I'd stayed grateful. I'd stayed small. Not anymore. That evening, I received a text from Jake. We need to meet. This is insane. I replied simply, You're 3 months behind on payments. That's what's insane. His response came fast, all caps and typos. Mom and Dad gave me this house, you can't just take it. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my filing cabinet and pulled out a folder I'd been building for the last 2 weeks. Inside were printed records of every financial gift my parents had given Jake over the years. The wedding. $12,000. The truck. $18,000 down payment, co-signed loan for the rest. The failed business startup. $35,000 in seed money. Rent payments. Credit card bailouts. Legal fees from a DUI he'd gotten 4 years ago. All together, over 6 years, they'd given Jake close to $190,000. I'd received birthday cards, occasional dinners, and $50 in an envelope. I didn't pull the file out of bitterness. I pulled it out because I needed to see the numbers. I needed proof that I wasn't imagining the disparity. That night, I drafted an email to my parents and Jake. I didn't send it yet. I just wrote it, letting the words form with the precision I used in contracts. Subject, mortgage terms and family accountability. To Mom, Dad, Jake. You're currently 3 months past due on the mortgage for the property at address. As of 2 weeks ago, I am the legal holder of that note. This isn't a surprise foreclosure. It's the result of financial decisions you made without transparency or planning. I'm not interested in punishing anyone, but I am interested in fairness. Here are the terms moving forward. 1. The monthly payment is $1,850. It will be paid on time every month without exception. 2. Any missed payment will trigger a formal notice of default. 3 missed payments will trigger foreclosure proceedings. 3. Jake and Melissa will cover the mortgage themselves. No more bailouts from Mom and Dad. 4. If Jake cannot afford the payment, he can sell the house, pay off the note, and keep whatever equity remains. 5. If he chooses to stay, he'll start building actual equity by making payments, something he should have been doing all along. These are non-negotiable. I'll be in touch next week to discuss how we move forward. Nina. I read it 3 times, adjusted 2 sentences, then saved it in my drafts. I wasn't ready to send it yet. Not until I'd decided whether I wanted reconciliation or separation. The next morning, Mom showed up at my apartment unannounced. I opened the door to find her standing in the hallway, eyes red and swollen. "Nina, please, can we talk?" I hesitated, then stepped aside to let her in. She walked slowly to the couch, sitting down like the weight of the world was pressing on her shoulders. "I didn't know it would hurt you this much," she said quietly. I stayed standing, arms crossed. "You didn't think about it at all. That's not fair." "It's completely fair, Mom." Her hands twisted in her lap, fingers knotting together. "We've always tried to help both of you. In different ways." "Different ways," I repeated. "Jake gets a house. I get $50. You've never needed our help. Because you never offered it." She looked up, tears streaming now. "You were always so capable, so independent. We didn't think." "You didn't think I wanted to feel valued?" Her mouth opened, but no words came. I took a slow breath, forcing my voice to stay level. "Jake's 34 years old, Mom. He's never kept a job longer than 2 years. He has no savings, no plan. And instead of letting him face the consequences of his choices, you and Dad keep bailing him out. He's struggling." "So was I said, my voice sharper now. "I struggled through college while working 2 jobs. I struggled to save for my first place while Jake was getting handouts. I struggled to build a career while you celebrated every mediocre thing he did like it was a miracle." Mom flinched. "And I stayed quiet," I continued, "because I thought if I just worked hard enough, eventually you'd see me the way you see him." "We do see you. You see what I accomplish. You don't see me." The silence between us was unbearable. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, smudging mascara across her cheek. "What do you want from us?" she whispered. "I want you to stop pretending this is fair. I want you to admit you've spent 30 years prioritizing Jake because it's easier than holding him accountable." Her breath caught. "And I want you to understand that I didn't buy that mortgage to punish you. I bought it because I could, because I'm good at what I do, and because I'm done being invisible." Mom stood slowly, her movements fragile. "I'm sorry," she said, barely audible. "I know." She turned toward the door, paused, then looked back. "Are you going to take the house from him?" I met her gaze, steady and unflinching. "That depends on whether he can afford to keep it." She left without another word. I closed the door behind her and stood there for a long moment, feeling the weight of decades shifting off my shoulders. It wasn't closure, but it was a start. The following week, I received a call from Jake. His voice was different this time, less anger, more exhaustion. "Can we meet?" he asked. "Just the 2 of us." I agreed. We met at a diner halfway between our places, one of those chrome and vinyl spots that looked frozen in time. Jake was already sitting in a booth when I arrived, hands wrapped around a coffee mug. He looked older than I remembered. Tired. I slid into the seat across from him and ordered tea. For a minute, neither of us spoke. Then he exhaled, long and heavy. "I didn't know about the loan," he said. "Not the details. Mom and Dad just told me the house was mine." "They mortgaged it to pay for your life, Jake." "I know that now." He stared into his coffee like it held answers. "I'm not good at this," he said quietly. "At being responsible. At planning ahead." "I know." You've always been better at it, at everything. I leaned back, studying him. That's not an excuse. I'm not making excuses, he said, voice strained. I'm just trying to explain. Explain what? That you've spent your whole life getting bailed out while I had to earn everything? His jaw tightened. You think I don't know that? You think I don't see the way Mom and Dad look at you like you're some kind of success story while I'm the screw-up? Then stop being the screw-up. The words came out harsher than I intended, but I didn't take them back. Jake looked up, eyes red-rimmed. I can't afford the mortgage, Nina. Then sell the house. I don't want to sell it. Then figure it out. He shook his head slowly, a bitter laugh escaping. You really don't care, do you? I care, I said. But I'm not responsible for fixing your problems anymore. None of us are. He set his mug down, hands trembling slightly. What if I can't? Then you lose the house. Just like anyone else who can't pay their mortgage. The silence stretched, broken only by the clatter of dishes from the kitchen. I thought family was supposed to help each other, he said quietly. Family is supposed to treat each other fairly, I replied. That didn't happen. He didn't argue. We sat there for another few minutes, the weight of 30 years sitting between us like a third person. Finally, Jake stood. I'll figure something out, he said. I don't know what, but I'll try. I nodded. He walked out, shoulders slumped, and I watched him go. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt tired. That night, I sent the email. The one I'd drafted days ago, sitting in my drafts folder like a loaded gun. I read it one last time, made no changes, and hit send. The responses came within an hour. Dad, this is unacceptable. Mom, please reconsider. Jake, I need more time. I replied to none of them. Instead, I poured a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and reviewed my financials. The mortgage payment was manageable, even if Jake defaulted. I could hold the property, rent it out, or sell it myself when the time came. But that wasn't the point. The point was that for the first time in my life, I held the power in this family. Not because I was cruel, because I was competent. And competence, unlike favoritism, couldn't be given away. It had to be earned. 3 months passed. Jake made the first payment. Barely. It came in 2 days late, cobbled together from what I assumed was a combination of Melissa's salary and some side work he'd picked up. The second payment came on time. The third, early. I didn't congratulate him. Nee and I didn't reach out. I just noted the payments in my records and moved on. Mom called occasionally, her voice always cautious, always searching for signs of softening. I was polite, distant. Dad stopped calling altogether. And slowly, quietly, I started to rebuild my life without the weight of their expectations pressing down on me. I took a promotion at work, leading a new division focused on distressed asset acquisition. I traveled. I dated. I stopped checking my phone every time it buzzed, hoping it was them finally seeing me, because I'd stopped needing them to. On a Saturday afternoon, 6 months after buying the mortgage, I received a text from Jake. Can I call you? I replied, yes. He called within minutes. I've been keeping up with the payments, he said, no preamble. I know. I got a job. A real one. Benefits? Salary? Oh, the whole thing. That's good, Jake. He paused. Melissa and I have been talking. About everything. About how things got this way. I didn't respond, letting him continue. I don't think I ever realized how much Mom and Dad gave me, or how much they didn't give you. It's not about the money, I said quietly. I know. It's about being seen. I closed my eyes, surprised by the ache in my chest. Yeah, it is. I'm sorry, he said. for all of it. I sat with that for a moment, letting the words settle. I appreciate that. Do you think... He hesitated. Do you think we can fix this? I don't know, I said honestly, but you making the payments is a start. He exhaled, relief evident. I'll keep making them. I promise. We hung up shortly after, and I sat on my couch, staring out the window. I wasn't sure if forgiveness was possible. But I knew something else. I'd taken control of my own story. I'd drawn boundaries. I'd stopped waiting for my family to value me and started valuing myself. And that, more than any house or mortgage or $50 bill, was worth everything. 1 year later, I stood in my parents' driveway again. This time, the sold sign was gone. The lawn was mowed. Jake's truck, still the same one, no new upgrades, was parked beside Melissa's sedan. I'd been invited for dinner, the first one in over a year. Mom answered the door, her smile tentative but genuine. Nina, I'm so glad you came. I stepped inside, the smell of roasted chicken and rosemary filling the air. Dad nodded from the kitchen, his greeting quiet but present. Jake and Melissa were already seated at the table, their daughter, 8 months old now, babbling in a high chair. I took my seat, and for the first time in my life, no one rushed to fill the silence with excuses or deflections. We just sat. And eventually, we talked. Not about the mortgage, not about the house, just about life, work, the baby. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And as I drove home that night, the city lights stretching out before me, I realized something. I didn't need them to give me a house. I'd built my own foundation, and no one could take that from me.